really think what you eat is really important, and it was one way to ensure that we have really healthy, properly raised livestock. And because I've always loved animals and somehow thought that I could make money doing this. The scale of farming I started with was about 25 chickens, and I did that because chickens require somewhat minimal infrastructure, and they're not big, they don't knock you over, they can't hurt you like a cow or a pig or something like that, so I thought it was a good place to start. So I started with chickens, and then got a cow, got a bunch of goats, then got into pigs, and now I have pretty much every species there is. I really like animals, so I decided pretty quickly I'd really rather do livestock. And then I thought chickens would be really easy, so I started with egg-laying chickens because those don't involve killing anything. And then we got a cow, and then we got some broiler chickens, and then, but all those, unless you're on a huge scale, it's really hard to make very much money. So then I got some pigs and gave that a shot. Some milk goats. It was actually a huge challenge trying to figure out which enterprises to pursue, and some I'm still doing and some I'm not.
Okay.
I initially started with chickens because I thought that would be a good place, relatively easy learning curve, and if something untoward happened to them, I wouldn't have a huge loss. And so I started with 25 chickens, and that mushroomed to about 1,000, and that actually I still have laying hens and enjoy them. And then I did broiler chickens, which are meat chickens that ultimately have to meet their demise, and that was a little bit of a challenge, but it was still all right. And then we have a cow. I milked goats for a while, decided that was totally way too time consuming and not very productive, coupled with the fact that we don't like goat milk. And then I decided I really needed something I felt like was a bigger anchor to what I was doing. And so actually I did have an orchard for a year, realized that was a ton of work and not much return. Then I kept pestering our extension agent, and between the two of us we decided to try pigs because most people around here, there's lots of cattle farmers, so we would try something different. And I'm still working on perfecting the pig operation, but between the egg layers and the pigs, that's kind of where I seem to have settled. I've had two farming obstacles that I did not foresee. The first is having to consider the perspective of my many neighbors who are not always accepting of what I'm doing for various reasons, or think that they are entitled to their opinion on how I do it and why. So that has been a huge, huge obstacle. And the second obstacle is lack of knowledge, because I've had animals in the past on much smaller scale, and I really thought that I could figure this out in no time at all and be up and productive and making a ton of money, or at least a steady income, a reasonable income, and I could keep my expenses at a reasonable level, and that has not been the case at all. It's been really, really hard to get enough information from other people who are doing what I'm doing, because even though small farms are what everybody is aiming for, but the knowledge base out there was tremendous probably 100 years ago, but most of it's been lost, and it's really hard to acquire the experience back of people who have done it and perfected it. The solution to some of the obstacles, the first being the perspective of the neighbors, is other people have helped me educate them to a certain extent. Some of it is just that I have to not be concerned what they say or think, and try not to be too affected by what they do. And then the education component, I'm still working on that one, as everybody is. use our extension department extensively, and I've gone to lots of classes, and I even went up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, thinking that the old ways are still alive up there, and as it turns out, they were actually interested in seeing how I did it, because they really don't have a lot of the old ways still going strong today. So education and figuring out how to do things productively and at a reasonable expense is a big part of it. I'm well enough prepared to start when I did. I thought I was. I thought I knew everything I needed to know, or I could figure it out in no time. And that's not really true. I did have some foundation, but it's just incredible how many things you find out you don't know when the problem happens. And there are all sorts of people out there who've done something for a year or two and think they've got it all solved and problems completely resolved, but I can tell you that is just not true. Until someone's done it for 5 or 10 years, they don't know what they're talking about, because they haven't encountered all the problems that are going to come along, which sooner or later they will have to deal with. I've taken a lot of steps to try to develop a market for what I'm doing. Initially, I just had a few dozen eggs here and there, so that was pretty easy. I could find enough friends that were happy to buy eggs on occasion. Then when I did the broilers, all of a sudden I had 100 chickens I had to find a freezer for pretty much overnight, because the slaughter date came up a little quicker than I anticipated. So I just emailed everybody I could think of and talked about it, and eventually pretty much got them sold. And then I tried that with the first couple pigs that I had, but then that just really was not a very good way to sustain a productive farm, and it took a lot of time. So I started going to chefs and restaurants, thinking that that would really be a better avenue, because they can buy a lot more at one time. And then after that, I decided to start an online farmers market, thinking that that would help not only me, but all the other farmers with my similar dilemma. So I've taken quite a few steps in many different directions, and I have to say that none of them have been ultimately the perfect solution. So that's still a huge challenge, trying to figure out how to get things marketed with a reasonable amount of marketing. Things like jumping out of bed first thing in the morning to milk goats. I did that for a little while, and then decided those goats were just as happy to be milked once a day, and I would do that in the middle of the day when I had time, not go flying out of bed and then come back dashing in the house, get the kids up and off to school. So some things I have figured out how to alter my schedule or the animal schedule to make it work better with what we're doing. As far as physical and emotional energy, that's a really good challenge. A lot of the work is fun. A lot of the work I do really requires a lot of help, and mustering great enthusiasm from my family has not always been the easiest thing. But and emotionally, it's incredibly draining, because when you know you have a certain amount of something that's got to get sold, and you're not having much luck finding someone who wants to buy it, that's really disheartening. And it's very frustrating that with all the news and with all the promotion that local food gets, it's still a huge challenge to find a market and a sustainable, ongoing market day in and day out. Of course, initially I had this great, wonderful view of getting up and dew on the grass and animals thrilled to see me, and being able to sell things in a reasonably easy and actually being profitable. And I have to say that I have really greatly changed my opinion of that. It's not always easy. A lot of things I do, I can do by myself, but there are a huge number of things that I really need somebody else to help me with, and that either means dragging my family out, or hiring somebody, or convincing a friend that it's a really good idea to help me. And that's hard to do. It's really hard to do. And so it's some parts of it are incredibly rewarding, but when it's 1,000 degrees outside and you have to be out all day, that's not so awesome. Nor is Trump shoveling 2 feet of snow from every gate you've got so that you can get in and out. That's a very definite yes and no answer. Yes, they all want me to do something that I enjoy and that I'm happy doing, but at the same time, when it involves too much of their time, or they feel like there's just not much return on whatever I'm doing, or it's just going to require way too much time or work or aggravation, then no. They're pretty quick to say, that's not productive, get rid of it, out it goes. I think my best advice to a startup farmer would be find somebody who's doing what you want to do and beg them to let you help them. Because the reality is you are not going to be a help for quite a while until you have some idea how to do whatever it is that they're doing. You're going to take a lot of their time that is unproductive for them until you get up to speed, but it is hugely to your benefit to have some experience at what you think you want to do, to first of all make sure that you want to do it, and second of all have some idea how to do it. It will end up costing you far less, and less animals or plants will suffer in the meantime if you have some experience from helping someone who's doing it productively.